Assalamu alaikum students, and a very good morning to you all. Welcome you back after a long time again, and I hope everyone is fine at home. So we started with the topic of energy and respiration, and we had just two previous lessons about it. Today, I will review a bit of the previous lessons and then adding a few more points. So if we look at energy and respiration, once again, we say that energy is required for all the reactions taking place inside the cell, and we cannot think of our survival without energy. And basically, the process of respiration is the main process which provides us with energy. And then I'm not going to discuss all those autotrophs, phototrophs. We have already discussed that the source of energy, the light energy, and the chemical energy stored in food molecules. Just I will come to the various examples of the work where energy is required, various processes which take place inside the human body or in the body of a living organism. Particularly, we are talking about human beings, our mammalian cells. Uh, where energy is required. Those examples can be, once again, for example, when we talk about anabolic reactions where there is a synthesis of complex substances from the simpler ones, then energy is required for all these processes. And examples of anabolic reactions, they could be synthesis of polysaccharides, synthesis of lipids, synthesis of polypeptides, nucleic acids, etc. Then one very important process which takes place inside the living organism and that requires the use of energy, that is the process of active transport. And we know that that is the movement of substances or molecules against a concentration gradient, and for that energy is required. Then there are so many examples of mechanical work such as muscular contraction which takes place inside the body. There are other cellular movements, for example, the movement of cilia, flagella, etc. Then it can be the conduction of nerve impulses, the process of cell division inside the body, inside the cells, that requires a lot of energy. And then you see there are many organisms which produce light, and there are many organisms which produce slight electrical discharge. That's once again because of the usage of energy. Then after that, one major use of energy is as thermal energy. Like we talked about ectotherms and endotherms in detail on that day, so I will not be discussing that again. Now coming to the after this, that in the process of respiration, the main respiratory substrate, we know that they are the carbohydrates, and among the carbohydrates, the main respiratory substrate is glucose. So you see, glucose is rich in energy. It's a highly energy-rich molecule, but it does not react easily. That is the problem with the glucose. So basically, that is because of the activation energy which has to be added before any reaction can take place. And we don't know that in living organism, either we can lower down the activation energy by using the enzymes, but in this case, what happens? We increase the energy level of glucose by the process of phosphorylation. We add a phosphate group is added to the glucose, and that increases the energy level of glucose, and that makes it more reactive so that it can enter into the process of respiration quite easily. Now, after this, we come to the structure of ATP molecule. Now, what is ATP? Basically, in the process of respiration, of course, energy is released. But that energy is not directly used in all those reactions which are requiring energy. Actually, that energy which is released in respiration, that is used to make an intermediate molecule which is called as ATP. Then this ATP is further hydrolyzed whenever energy is required. And whenever ATP is hydrolyzed, obviously a large amount of energy is going to be released. So basically, that's why we say ATP is an intermediate molecule between the energy requiring reactions and energy yielding reactions. Energy requiring reactions, of course, all those reactions where energy is required. Energy yielding reaction, mainly we are talking about a respiration over here. So that's why we also say that ATP is also called as the energy currency of the cell, because our body trades in ATP, just like we use a local currency in the market for any sort of trading. So in the same way, inside our body, our whole trading takes place through ATP. So that's why ATP is also called as the energy currency of the cell. And what else we can write down when this question comes, that ATP, describe ATP as energy currency of the cell. Okay, so coming to the structure of ATP first, we know that if we look at the structure of ATP, which is given in this diagram as well, you can see that ATP consists of actually three components. One is the pentose sugar, which is ribose here. One is the nitrogenous base, which is adenine. And there are three phosphate groups attached to it, which gives its name, which is adenosine triphosphate. Triphosphate, you can understand, it's because of the three phosphate groups attached. Adenosine, actually, when all the three phosphate groups have been removed, the leftover structure, which consists of only ribose and adenine, that is collectively called as adenosine. So that's why ATP is called so adenosine triphosphate. Now you can see when ATP is hydrolyzed, it's hydrolyzed in stages. In the very first stage, when first phosphate group is removed, it changes into adenosine diphosphate, because now two remaining phosphate groups are there. Then in the next step, again, one more phosphate group is removed, and that's why the name changes to adenosine monophosphate, because now only one phosphate group is attached to adenosine. And when the last phosphate group is removed, whatever is left behind, that is called as adenosine, means now only ribose and adenine are left behind. So coming to the hydrolysis of ATP, you can see over here when ATP gets hydrolyzed into the first step and it changes into the ADP with the removal of first phosphate group, 30.5 kilojoules per mole energy is released. Again, in the second step, again, when the second phosphate group is removed, again the same amount of energy is released and ADP changes into AMP. Now when the third phosphate group is removed, again the amount of energy is released, but this time the amount of energy released is small, and that is 14.2 kilojoules per mole. And now you can see over here that uh, when the last phosphate group has been removed, what is left behind, that is adenosine. So this is the complete hydrolysis of ATP. Now remember two things over here. Whenever we have to write down the word of phosphate, we use the symbol of capital P and small I. This I have already mentioned. This indicates this is inorganic phosphate. There are organic forms of phosphate also present, but over here this is inorganic phosphate, so it has to be written always as capital P small I. Now this factor we have already discussed, why there is a difference in the amount of energy released in the first two and the last in the last step. As we discussed earlier as well, that it was thought earlier that the first two bonds which are responsible for the removal or for the breakdown of the first two phosphate groups, they are the high energy bonds, that's why more amount of energy is released, while the last bond is the low energy bond, that's why a small amount of energy is released. But this is all incorrect now, and it has been proved that because the energy does not come simply from breaking the bonds, but it comes from the overall changes in the chemical potential energy of the whole system of that molecule. Okay, so that's why there is a difference in the energy released Now we come to the next slide, and that is one more thing to clarify over here, that actually ATP completely, it can be completely hydrolyzed till the last step. But actually in the human body or in the cell, inside the living cell, it's only up till here that this process takes place. Means ATP is hydrolyzed into ADP, because you see whenever because when ATP is going to be hydrolyzed into ADP, this much amount of energy is going to be released. Why it's not further hydrolyzed into the cell? Because if we go to the last stage, which is adenosine left behind, it means now when energy is going to be released in the process of respiration, and that energy is used for the synthesis of ATP, it means all those processes will be again repeated, and of course it is then going to be time consuming, and energy requirement is quite it may be very immediate as well. So that's why ATP gets hydrolyzed into ADP. It does not go further beyond as far as the hydrolysis is concerned. So whenever energy is released as a result of respiration, and if ADP and inorganic phosphates are already available in the cell, they quickly combine together and they form and that leads to the formation of ATP. Now, this interconversion of ATP into ADP and then back into ATP, this is a reversible process. And we can see that this rate of interconversion means ATP is converted into ADP or ADP is converted back into ATP. This is quite high. It is estimated that a resting human, now when we are talking about a resting human, it means a person is not doing any activity, it's only the basic metabolism being carried on. So you can imagine at that time, even a human is resting, we are using about 40 kg of ATP in 24 hours. But if you look at ATP reserves in the body at any time, we do not contain more than 5 grams of ATP at any one time in the body. So this thing clearly indicates that ATP is, because sometimes it is a confusion that ATP is an energy storage molecule. No, it's clearly, please make it very very clear, I'm making it very clear, ATP is not an energy storage molecule. Because if it is an energy storage molecule, you see large reserves of ATP in the body at any time. However, we can see that a resting human is using 40 kg of ATP in 24 hours, while at any time we are just having only 5 grams of ATP. So that clearly indicates that ATP is not an energy storage molecule. It is the energy currency of the cell. It is the intermediate molecule between the energy yielding and energy requiring reactions. And we can see that during when a person is doing this turnus exercise, rate of ATP breakdown of course increases much, and it can be as much as 0.5 kg per minute. So you can see this rate is quite high once again. So that's why once again we say ATP is the energy currency of the cell. Whenever your body is going to need the energy, ATP keeps on forming side by side, and as soon as energy is required, it is quickly hydrolyzed to give its energy. We have already discussed this point that ATP is the intermediate molecule. However, you must remember that energy transfer process is inefficient, because whenever energy is transferred from one form to another, some energy is converted into the thermal energy, and most of the time some of the thermal energy can be used to maintain the internal body temperature, while rest of the energy is wasted. And that's why you see the process of respiration is not a single process. It is divided into many small steps, and we have already discussed that there are advantages of having small steps. First, these small steps, they give a precise control. It's easy to control the small steps rather than a large step. Secondly, energy is not wasted. Like at each step, a small amount of energy is released, which is used for the synthesis of ATP. And much energy is not wasted in this way. Rather than that, if it is the single large step and all energy becomes available at the end of that step, so maybe at that time energy requirement is not that much. So whatever energy is required, that is used, later is converted, rest is converted into the thermal energy, which is wasted once again. Okay, so one more thing that one thing which is not related to this slide, but generally that once again you should be very clear about it, that ATP is not an energy storage molecule. It is the energy currency molecule. Okay, and this is the immediate donor of energy to the cells energy requiring reactions. Okay, and when we talk about energy storage molecules, they can be like you see the glycogen is there, starch is there. They are the actually the energy storage molecules. Even glucose can be an energy storage molecule, but that is a short term energy storage molecule as compared to starch and glycogen, which are the long term energy storage molecules. Now, once again, this is we have already discussed, and there was a question related to this in the worksheet which I posted previously. Um, uh, Obviously, when ATP has to perform its role as the energy currency of the cell, as the immediate donor of energy to the cell, it must have some properties which are going to enable it to perform its function superbly. So, one feature is it's a very small molecule. Second is it is water soluble. It is highly soluble. Both of these, because of both of these properties being small and water soluble, it is easily transported around the cell. Thirdly, it's highly unstable. Of course, we can understand when we say ATP is the immediate donor of energy, means whenever energy is needed, it has to be quickly hydrolyzed. So that's why it's because of its high instability, that being unstable, it is readily hydrolyzed to release energy whenever required. Okay, if you when you will be looking at the book, you will see after where ATP as energy currency has been discussed, they have talked about synthesis of ATP and role of ATP in active transport. We will be discussing it, but it's more appropriate if we discuss these two subtopics once we complete the structure of mitochondrion and the process of respiration as well. Then you will be then it will be you will be more able to understand more easily. It will be more easily understandable at that time rather than if I discuss it at the start. So moving to the process of respiration. um, Obviously, organic molecules, they act as a fuel for respiration. They are used in the process of respiration to be oxidized. And we know that once again, the main respiratory substrate for most of the cell is carbohydrate. And among carbohydrate, the most common carbohydrate is glucose. Some cells, however, they only use glucose as a respiratory substrate. They don't go for any other option. For example, your brain cells. That's why, whenever there is a drop in the sugar level, particularly in case of the diabetic, a person can easily go into the coma because of the low blood sugar level. It's because of the brain cells, because the brain cells, they're not getting enough glucose at that time. Other cells, they may break down fatty acids, amino acids, and glycerols in the process of respiration. But remember that when we will be talking about the stages of respiration and the process of respiration in detail, we will be we will be looking at that. It has different stages, but remember that those stages we are going to study with the reference to glucose breakdown only. right? When we are talking about the breakdown of fatty acids, amino acids, and glycerol in the process of respiration, they enter into the process of respiration at various stages. Okay, though that's not in the syllabus in detail, but I will be telling you side by side where fatty acids can enter into the process of respiration, at which stage glycerol or amino acid can also enter into the process of respiration. But remember that the process of respiration which we are going to study, that is basically about the when glucose is used as the main respiratory substrate. So, looking at the stages of respiration, there are four stages of glucose breakdown. The first one is glycolysis, second is link reaction, third is Krebs cycle. The fourth one is oxidative phosphorylation. Oxidative phosphorylation is also called as electron transport chain, which is abbreviated as ETC. Now, the mitochondria we know is the main organelle. Mitochondrion is the main organelle inside the cell, which is concerned with the process of respiration, the process of cellular respiration, cellular aerobic respiration takes place inside mitochondria. However, remember that all the stages which I have mentioned earlier, they do not take place inside the mitochondria. If we look at the process of glycolysis, it takes place in the cytoplasm of the cell. So it means it does not take place inside the mitochondrion. Then comes the link reaction. Obviously, the glycolysis starts with the glucose. Then whatever is the end product of glycolysis, that is transported inside the mitochondria. And then the other three steps of um, respiration, aerobic respiration, they take place inside the mitochondria. Link reaction takes place in the matrix of mitochondrion. The Krebs cycle also takes place in the matrix of mitochondrion. However, oxidative phosphorylation occurs on inner mitochondrial membrane. So this was all about today. Uh, Now, after tomorrow, inshallah, we will be discussing the structure of mitochondria first, and after that, we will be starting with the process of respiration in detail. Um, I hope this will be clear, and if the internet problem has been solved, then of course by the end of the lesson we will be in having inshallah question answer session as well. So if there is anything unclear, you can talk to me at any time. Apart from that, whenever you need to talk to me, you can talk to me on my number as well, which is available to most of the students. If anyone is not having, you can take it from any other student. From And one thing, the worksheet which was posted with the second last previous lesson, it was only sent by 3 students. I did not check the worksheet. Why? Because one worksheet was sent me as a screenshot. The second was solved in the PDF. Kindly, those worksheets are sent in Word. Try to solve those in the Word, then it's easier for me to mark. That's why I couldn't mark those worksheets. And please, all of you should be submitting the mark sheets. You are not going to have any marks deducted for that mark sheet. I mean, they are not going to be included in your anywhere in the assessments or something like that. So please, if you are not clear about the answers, whatever the answers come in your mind, please write it down. But do submit your assignments, do whatever the work is given to you in time. Thank you very much. So see you tomorrow. Have a nice day. Allah Hafiz.